Oi, what's wrong with you? Not even brave enough to fire a gun?
Released October 19th, 2025, flat and in VR on PS5 and PC by developer and publisher Q Games. Dreams of Another is one of those rare gaming experiences that proves that, outside the box, against the grain, unique ideas aren't necessarily a good thing. It's all good and well to criticize AAA games, cookie cutter games, game developers who play it safe for one reason or the other. But because you decide not to follow the safe template will not be enough to justify your efforts or equate a quality experience. Thanks to Pirate PR for the PSVR 2 key. Watch Season 13 of the Lab Video Game TV starting January 2026 on Flow One in 25 Caribbean countries. Download the Stream Blue app to watch us on the go. Check out the Lab Video Game TV's gaming news every Thursday at 4 p.m. during the Sage Projects on Ontario's Island Radio, 101.3 FM. Here are my thoughts on Dreams of Another.
It's almost night, so it's time for us to get to work.
The developers of Dreams of Another experimented with the notion of using guns for creation instead of destruction as their main gameplay mechanic in this oddly told adventure. Now, while leading up to the launch of Dreams of Another, I watched and read where many content creators seemed interested, talking up Dreams of Another as if it was something potentially great to look out for, like it was one of 2025's possible hits. I never got this. First up, it looked horrible. I mean, aesthetically. The art style was hard to look at, even the trailers. Then, there was nothing particularly interesting in any of these trailers that caught my attention or gave me any reason to say, this might be interesting. Hey, but to each their own, I guess.
It's rude to interrupt someone who's reading. Well, I'm just pretending to read though.
I'm always open to new ideas, always willing to give something new, within reason, a shot, particularly in VR. So I saw an opportunity to grab a key and I took it, and here we are. I've experienced odd, unique, outside the box games before, but this is the aforementioned done wrong.
You're finally here. The man in pajamas.
The story of Dreams of Another. The best words I can use to describe it, in a nutshell, are uninteresting, potentially pretentious, and convoluted. For at least the first half of this experience, I was doing my utmost best to give it a fair shake. I kept telling myself, perhaps it's just me. Maybe I just don't get it. Maybe this story is relevant to the creators. Maybe it's an extremely personal piece the developers wanted to share with the world. So I kept at it, giving Dreams of Another the benefit of the doubt, but the story just never did it for me.
And because we use the OS to move and think, we can't scan the parts to the base of our own system. You could say the same for society. A rule in which we don't even know why it exists.
I see where there are messages here. Some I agree with, some not so much. But still, these messages are just terribly conveyed regardless.
That's true. It may be harder to understand yourself than it is to understand others.
All the elements I'm about to go over helps drive my point home. In sound, the music is annoying, and maybe it has something to do with the experience's runtime. But for a while, just listening to the music at the opening screen started to make me nauseous. It's like Dreams of Another traumatized me. Then the voice acting. The jury is still out on whether this was bad voice acting by actual people or some of that generally god-awful AI slop.
A big blue fish. Would that be you by any chance?
Are you the one who come from this ocean? If that's true, please tell us where the path to freedom is.
The voice acting for every single character was so bad, and this aided in the downfall of the message delivery.
My second son was a bit of an overthinker, but he was a good kid. My youngest doesn't listen to me, and isn't all that clever, so I won't raise my expectations.
A song could have the most meaningful, profound, relevant message. If the singer sounds like a wounded animal or fingernails on a chalkboard, no one will ever truly be able to receive this message.
I thought this withered flower was beautiful. I'm not sure why. However, at the very least, I knew I preferred the colors of the faded petals.
The voice acting in Dreams of Another was as bad as fingernails on a chalkboard.
We're the mascots here, the angelic angels. We're trained to say angel-like words of wisdom to the customers.
The sound effects did not help either. Whether or not these guns are for creation or destruction, in the dream world or the real world, they should not have to sound like this. Let me expand on the visuals. The art style is interesting. I never liked it from the little I saw from the trailers, but it's still, to this day, interesting. The devs call this rendering through point cloud technology. One look at it and it had me thinking, if this is so hard to look at flat, it has to be literally, physically sickening in VR. Strong, experienced VR legs or not, but like I said, the fact that this experience has a VR version made me willing to take one for the team if needed. And I did. The visuals ended up being like all the other elements that make up this experience. Another shot in the foot. The visuals were yet another reason I just wanted this experience to end. And for some reason, the main screen, the title screen I guess, which by the way, you abruptly return to at random points throughout the game for some reason, looked exceptionally bad. The developer also decided to use flat cutscenes as well. This also did not help the experience.
This is where we used to hang out. We were soothed by the sounds of the water.
Now over in gameplay, the aspect I was clinging to be Dreams of Another's saving grace. I pride myself in being a great judge of character and just about any and everything else. This includes first impressions. I'm repeating myself, but I never had high expectations for Dreams of Another from the trailers. But while I'm a good judge generally, as I know what works for me without having to go too far or deep, I can tell by simply looking through a window or over a fence to know if what's on the other end will vibe with me or not. I don't have to go in. I also know I could be wrong, and have been wrong before. With Dreams of Another, however, this wasn't one of those instances.
But I personally couldn't care less.
Gameplay did not save it. On startup, we've got options for controls, sound, language, VR mode perspectives, and tips. The general mechanic and premise here is, you're the man in pajamas. You're apparently in some kind of comatose state. You play out this experience in your dreams. You're dreaming of a soldier, the wandering soldier, who's a spineless coward and an idiot apparently, based on the idiotic nonsense he's constantly on about.
You might know this already, but I'm totally useless.
Throughout this really long, senseless dream, you meet many characters going through different life crises. This all leans towards Dreams of Another's pretentiousness and poor storytelling and message delivery. Here's what I'm thinking. Have you ever heard a song? The lyrics are juvenile, shallow, and ultimately empty. But because the singer had such a great voice, great talent, exceptional delivery, you were able to find it entertaining and even gave it purpose because it was so well delivered. Say you watched a movie like Training Day, Shawshank Redemption. Now, were these movies really that deep, that great? Would you have enjoyed these movies as much if they were produced on a shoestring budget? Same premise, same plot, but with C-grade actors on Tubi. What I'm saying is, perhaps if the exact same idea the developers had for Dreams of Another was portrayed by competent voice actors with good visuals, a much better script, a good score, then maybe, just maybe, Dreams of Another would have been a worthwhile experience. But this was delivered so poorly. Look, it's not even a matter of budget, good or bad voice acting. Check this experience out on Steam. It's an indie project, created by one guy I think, who had to have himself, family, and friends chip in for voice acting. It's called Into a Dream. Into a Dream had a message. It was very personal to the developer. It was very indie. The voice acting was subpar, but I got it. And it certainly wasn't a bad experience. So, there's really no excuse for this.
I'm not really following this complicated stuff.
Then there was the duration. I don't think PlayStation tracks and records playtime the way Steam does, so I can't say for certain how long I spent with Dreams of Another. But however long it was way too long. Dreams of Another felt like it just would not end.
Objects in this world are so mystifying, even if they're made of the same material. They each have their own story and history that gives them meaning, at least from humanity's perspective.
You may be wondering, well, why subject yourself to that? Well, I'm a bit of a completionist for starters, and I insisted on giving Dreams of Another a fair shake. I'm not one of those video game journalists or YouTubers who gets off on cynicism and negativity. Never was, never will be. Should I ever publicize a bad review for a game, it's because I meant it. And I won't just run through an hour then pass judgment. But an hour or two was what Dreams of Another's runtime should have been. Not a minute longer. It just dragged on, never improving. The further I went, is the worse it seemed to become. Nothing was adding up. It wasn't funny. It wasn't pleasing on any of the senses. It just wouldn't end. You see, someone could be watching this review thinking, bro, you haven't even gone in depth on the mechanics or this story you claim to abhor. Well, that's because neither the mechanics or the story are worth the effort.
Bring something again?
You'd speak with the wandering soldier, give him items you picked up, get ammo, get upgrades. But for what? I played through the entire experience and not once did I see the use for any of this. I got grenades, a rocket launcher, but for what?
One man's trash is another man's treasure, I guess.
Sometimes a dialogue would get so pointlessly annoying, I just start speeding through it, as apparently there's no way to skip these ramblings entirely.
According to the rumors, there's a trash can in something called a computer. For us trash cans stuffed with garbage and forced to endure the smell every day.
There will be times when you'll be given the illusion of choice. The wandering soldier asks you a question, you select an answer. I have yet to see the effect this has on the overall experience. Nothing changes.
When throwing things away, how do you decide what to get rid of? I see. Interesting.
Dreams of Another does not respect the player. It does not respect your time and feels like a violation. It feels like an insult to my intelligence. That's how bad this game is. Feel free to test the waters firsthand and form your own opinions. But to sit here giving you my interpretation of Dreams of Another's plot would only serve to make me feel silly and probably wouldn't give you needed clarity anyway.
This is my life's work. Eternal Upcycle. This big ring. It's made up of the wedding rings of countless divorced people.
I also toyed with the notion that Dreams of Another is about a dream, and most dreams make very little sense to both the person who had it and anyone you attempted to explain it to. This is why when someone asks me if I'd like to hear about a dream they had, my response is usually no. I explored this in a further attempt to cut Dreams of Another some slack. But this would be like having the most senseless, idiotic dream and then breaking it down, recapping it to someone for hours. Who would want that?
But I personally couldn't care less.
Apparently that's what Dreams of Another is. One really long, idiotic dream that the devs decided to share with the world. Why?
I don't like the way you're thinking.
Dreams of Another also has basically no difficulty. It's more like a walking sim. Occasionally, these odd puzzles will pop up that aren't really puzzling. Sometimes you may not know where to go next, then a waypoint of sorts will pop up. So, you're never really stuck. The only real difficulty present here is the boredom, the tedium, the pointlessness of it all. You'll go through some sections, hear some moles, beavers, or fish talking some garbage to each other, then you'll walk through a tunnel with a light at the end, thinking, this is it, the end is nigh. But then no, it returns abruptly to the main screen. The man laying in the bed is perhaps in another position, some guy enters the room, starts watching him, then the experience continues.
I don't know if you can hear me, but will you listen for a minute? It's true I've been through a lot, but the life I had been living was utterly meaningless. Being a soldier who can't even shoot a gun.
Even to the point that Dreams of Another finally rolled the credits. I was still asking myself, what the hell is this garbage? I wanted to give Dreams of Another a chance. I did. But still, Dreams of Another is clearly the worst gaming experience I've had all year and beyond. I'd say it's the worst gaming experience I've ever had, but I might be lying, and I have a thing about lying. Or let me say a thing against lying. I've been in this gaming thing for a long time, so it's hard to say with honesty and any amount of certainty if this is the worst gaming experience I've ever had. But from what I can recall, it is, and that speaks volumes.
That turned into quite the situation. Holy hell.
Thanks again to Pirate PR for the PSVR 2 key. All knowledge properly applied is power. In every experience there are lessons. So I don't regret playing this, as god-awful an experience as it was. Watch Season 13 of the Lab Video Game TV starting January 2026 on Flow 1 in 25 Caribbean countries. Download the Stream Blue app to watch us on the go. Check out the Lab Video Game TV's gaming news every Thursday at 4 p.m. during the Sage Projects on Ontario's Island Radio 101.3 FM. Thank you for watching. If you like my content, feel free to like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. If on the other hand I found a way to piss you off with this one, then feel free to dislike, unsub, leave a feisty comment voicing your displeasure. Whatever it takes to make you feel vindicated, partner. Whatever. Either way, I won't hold it against you. Our game is never over.
To be honest, I'm not really interested.